Due to the demographics of a particular school district, it is virtually impossible to alter the input, also known as students and parents, that participate in the system. On the contrary, Bernhardt states, school processes are the only measures over which we have almost complete control. Public schools cannot control who the students are, where they come from, or why they think the way they do when they come to us. However, schools can control a portion of the student learning results through their processes, i.e., curriculum strategies, assessment practices, programs, environment. More than once in your career as an educational leader, you will be called upon to reinforce this argument when your staff or colleagues complain, how can you expect our students to achieve at a higher rate considering the environment they live in and their family structure? I guarantee you will be confronted by this argument. Bernhardt lists 4 areas that are the subject of the search for relevant school program and process data. Are instructional processes, organizational processes, administrative processes, and continuous school improvement processes. In order to assess and gather school process data in the school setting, Bernhardt recommends that you first list all of the instructional, organizational, administrative, and continuous school improvement programs and processes evident in your school. Then you must engage in the rigorous assessment of each, asking these questions. What is the purpose of the program or process? How will you know the purpose is being met? Who is the program or process intended to serve? What would it look like when the program or process is fully implemented? How is implementation being measured? And to what degree is the program or process being implemented? This is a time-consuming process to say the least, as the graphic on Figure 6.2 of the Bernhardt text makes clear. In our continuing effort to make EDU 599 as practical and relevant to the real world as possible, we offer you a different but complementary approach to school process and program analysis. In fact, during your careers as future building principals, you may find yourself in a position where you are required to engage in the process due to the levels of student achievement and the requirements of the federal and state accountability laws and regulations. We are referring to the required review process a school or district must submit to if it is considered a focus or priority school under the terms of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act and the recently approved waiver to the act secured by the state of New York. Let's hear from one of the professionals in the field who is responsible for conducting such a review with focus or priority school. Please meet Rebecca Donnelly, who is a staff development specialist with Erie to Chautauqua Cattaraugus BOCES.
My background in the area of school improvement, I believe, first started several years ago when I worked for a school district out west, and we did a 5-year school improvement cycle, and my role as the director of secondary special education was fundamental in that we were concerned about the improvement rates for students with disabilities, and the thinking behind that. That was one of the areas that we were focused in on, helping to support students with special needs. That then led to my work here in Western New York and my introduction to the tool that is utilized by New York State, the DTSDE, the Diagnostic Tool for School and District Effectiveness. And I was introduced to that tool through my work with Johns Hopkins University and Talent Development Secondary in helping to support large districts who were in the improvement process as an EPO. And New York State gave us the tool, the DTSDE, to help monitor the improvement process. So that was my introduction to that tool. I have had an opportunity in working in this region to help to support districts who are thinking deeply about their school improvement process, either as a result of priority or focus designation. My role is specific to helping to facilitate conversations around the DTSDE and the tenets and the statements of practice associated with each of the tenets. Each of the 6 tenets, those tenets are number 1, district leadership and capacity, school leader practices and decisions for tenet 2, tenet 3 is curriculum development and support, tenet 4 is teacher practices and decisions, tenet 5 is student social and emotional developmental health, and tenet 6 is family and community engagement. As I indicated, each of those tenets are associated with several statements of practice, and those statements of practice have a significant research base behind them that allows schools that are in improvement to do some detailed analysis of their data and their perception surveys to come to some very strategic conclusions about the work that they're involved in. My work with districts who are in the improvement process, primarily through a focus or priority designation, has been to be invited in to help to facilitate a conversation around each of the 6 tenets and the statements of practice. The process that is utilized is typically a negotiated conversation with district and school leadership about the diagnostic tool and the rubric associated with it, and the types of questions that will best focus in on the needs of the particular district. So once the questions are designed or identified in connection with the rubric, then school and district leadership identify who on the within the instructional community will be interviewed. We then think about whether those folks will be interviewed as an entire group, whether they'll be individually interviewed, or whether they'll be interviewed by discipline, so that the best responses can be produced. We also take a look at the district and school data and present that to individuals prior to the interviews so that they can analyze their data and become reflective on the data in connection with the questions in the diagnostic tool. Then we engage in the actual conversations, and faculty are encouraged to think deeply about the data, think about their own experiences in the classroom, think about observations that they have had in the variety of settings that they work in at the district or the school level, and have a conversation in connection with each of the 6 tenets and the statements of practice. Once all of those interviews take place, that information is then culled into a reflection tool, and that reflection tool is presented to the district for its review and analysis. Then teams are thinking about the best impact that tool can have, and then come up with areas of focus dependent upon their designation, either as a focus school or a priority school. And that's where the work begins, because the tool, this is only the beginning. The DTSDE is only a beginning. It's really the foundation of the next steps, which are to develop a strong plan of action over the next 3 to 5 years, and be very thoughtful and intentional about how to follow up as a leadership community in ensuring that the instructional community has the tools and supports necessary to implement that plan. The DTSDE is a tool that I am continually amazed by from a very objective user point of view, because there is so much information that is available to the public. This is the work of the public schools to identify the areas and opportunities for growth. So schools who have engaged in the DTSDE process from any point of view, particularly from the state point of view, are able to post these documents on their school websites, and the state also holds these documents for public review on their state site. The DTSDE is a public document along with all of the associated tools and resources necessary for schools to engage in this process. And I must say, as a practitioner, I have been very grateful for the opportunity to access all of these tools and materials and supports, along with the webinars and guidance that helps to make this a living, practical tool for the work that we do in our public school settings. Some of the examples of school processes and practices that I try to assist schools and their work on include the use of teacher practices and decision-making. And a primary concern for me are student social and emotional developmental health and community and family engagement. So this is why I am very excited about the DTSDE as a living tool for schools and districts. As an example, a resource guide for schools and districts shows under Tenet 2 the statement of practice that is an area of focus, and then strategies that we can reflect on, and then the actual exemplars that any team that might do a walkthrough of the school or engage in a conversation with instructional leaders. So the resource guide for each of the tenets breaks the tenant down into specific strategies or look-fors as you start to delve into the conversation with faculty and administrative teams about their practical application of the tenets. And there are so many ideas and talking points that are connected in with the resource guide. But the area that I absolutely love is the research and resources for guidance at the end of each of the tenets and statements of practice. On the website, these are all hyperlinked to very specific points of research or tools that can be beneficial to a team as they're exploring their improvement process.
Thank you, Rebecca. Now we get to the assignment associated with Chapter 6 and school process data. In the context of EDU 599, it will be virtually impossible to create an assignment that requires you to assess the effectiveness of the programs and processes present in your school or organization. But we can take small practical steps that will prepare you for this exhaustive data collection process in the event you are called upon to do so as a future educational leader. For this, we turn to the reflection questions posed by Bernhardt at the end of this chapter. She asks, what are school process data? Why are school process data important for continuous school improvement? And finally, do you know what programs and processes are being implemented in your school? Your assignment is to focus on the third question. You are required to create your own list of the actual school programs and processes being implemented at your school or organization. You will collect the data using a chart similar to Figure 6.1 on page 82 of the text. You are to include in your list all of the instructional, organizational, administrative, continuous school improvement processes and miscellaneous programs evident in your school or organization. It is permissible to work together on your list in your online group sessions. However, each of you must submit to the instructor your personal list. The list will be shared with the group prior to the next regularly scheduled online class session. Finally, here's a special note and caution. While preparing this lesson, the instructor noticed this news article pertaining to the reauthorization of what was formerly known as No Child Left Behind Act, now called the Every Child Succeeds Act. The proposed regulations may in fact alter the accountability factors against which public schools are measured. We will not explore these proposed changes at this time. However, the lesson here is, be careful as an educational leader because the statutes and regulations governing your behavior are always changing.